So I love that you mentioned how we are always talking about authenticity and vulnerability because, you know, some may think that's a bad thing, but I think, wow, if that's what we're known for, if that's what we're known for always talking about vulnerability, always talking about authenticity and oneness and wholeness. I mean, if that's the thing, then man, I mean, I think then we've hit it because you're right. I think that
Yeah.
the culmination of those four things really um, uh, empower us to live from the space that we're talking about, this unpackaged life. I mean, I don't know that we can live from that space or even explore this conversation without mentioning any of those four things. And so, as you were talking, I just really kind of got that energy. What would it feel like to be able to really actualize this? I mean,
Mm.
we talk about it, but like actualize it in our daily lives. And I think that's what we're doing. I mean, that's what I think this thing called life and spiritual path and whatever you want to call it is that process of just learning what that is, learning who I am before I can even show up authentically. I love that we talk about it all the time, actually. I think we
Yeah.
can talk about it every week and still like dig something deeper and deeper and deeper, something the next layer and the next layer and the next layer.
Well, I shouldn't be surprised that that's your first thought, because that was going to be my first thought as well. Like, yeah, it does feel like we talk about it all the time, and that's okay. And this month, it feels like it's a whole other, like it's a whole level deeper. It's a whole, I don't know if it's a much more like 360 approach to it. It's something about the way the pieces came together within this unpackaged context that, for me at least, hit in a whole new way, in a much more like tangible, real way. Not that oneness didn't feel real before, or wholeness didn't feel real before, or vulnerability or authentic. Like those all felt real. Like I had a very real connection to those prior to this week, prior to today. And yet there's something about it, like this month leading into this week, especially, where it's like, oh, yeah, those are all like one different aspects of one thing. What we're talking about, I mean, especially when we put it in the context of the unpackaged life, right? Like the one thing we're talking about is all four of these things. And they really did, like, they just integrated themselves into a way of being that just made a whole lot more, like even more sense than they ever have before.
The energy of the month has been, permission to be, and then freedom to be, and then dare to be. And so it kept on getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so
Yeah.
I think for me, what made it seem a little bit different than previous conversations is this kind of movement, this kind of like, I don't know, it just seemed a little bit more I don't know, just kind of,
Yeah.
yes, it's this forward moving sort of ball of whatever you want to call it.
Unpackagedness.
Well, it's almost like, with you permission to be, okay, I can breathe a little bit more expansive. And then could breathe a little bit more. And now I dare to be, it's like, okay, all right, now I'm feeling it a little bit. I can, I'm kind of understanding these four components and really kind of, I don't know, strengthening myself to then actually be able to live those. So I
Yeah.
don't know, you're right. It had a different energy, had a different sort of expansive sort of feel.
Yeah.
And now I feel like we can take on the world. I mean, it has that kind of feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and doesn't it have that, like, I don't know, there's something about the word dare to me that, like, it brings me back to watching like the Christmas Story, like a double dog dare you. But there is that like aspect to it of it's one thing to give yourself permission, but you only have to give yourself permission when the rest of the world says it's not okay. That voice that we've picked up, the tape we're running our head says it's not okay. So we're like, all right, well, if it's not okay, I can't do it. All right, well, you can give yourself permission. We give you permission to give yourself permission to do the thing, but it still has this like, well, all right, I have permission, but we're probably not supposed to. I don't know, right? And then it's like, all right, but when you give yourself permission, there is this freedom where it's like, all right, we're not supposed to, but I can. Like, all right, I'm gonna break some of the rules or whatever, but I can do it. But this idea of like daring, like, it's like, I don't care if there's other rules. Like, that's a whole other viewpoint for me. Like, yeah, what, dude, there's other rules, whatever. I'm gonna do it. Like, I dare you to do this. All right, fine. I'm gonna go do it anyway. It's like it's a whole other vibe in the sense that it almost like sets aside the rules. It's like yeah, whatever. There's rules. They don't apply here. It's fine. We're daring to do it differently. We're daring to be this whole other way. And that to me feels I know it feels all the things. It feels like freedom. It feels like there's permission. It feels daring. It feels open. It feels expansive. It feels like, oh, right. Like we really don't need the permission. Like, I don't know. It's kind of like a full circle. We don't need the permission because the rules that we needed permission to break are actually just made up.
Yeah.
Like they've just been made up, and we can do it however we want.
Well, it's interesting. You have that kind of feeling, that dare, and then when I hear dare, I hear this idea of kind of like the subversive sort of wholeness idea, that there are going to be things that aren't easy. There are going to be things that we are challenged with. There are going to be things that may not show up the way we thought they were going to show up. But then living life anyway, or showing up anyway. So for me, it has this idea of, yeah, I'm going to be afraid. And yeah, I'm going to be anxious. And yeah, I'm going to be uncomfortable. But I know that living authentically and living the life that I am here to live is worth all of that. And so that I'm going to dare, I'm going to be brave enough to step beyond the constraints that those things may have had on me in the past. So yeah, it's this very, I don't know. For me, it's like this awareness of, that we're not looking at the stuff that's challenging, and we're not discounting the impact that it has on our very real lived experiences. And so, I think for me, it's like, but we have the ability and the power and all the things to step out anyway, right? And to express anyway, and understand that those things, those fears or doubts or things like that, also serve to support us in that. And so when we begin to look at those things that make us afraid, we can't move through the thing until we look at the thing. And so I think this dare to be really calls us to do all of those things, and especially within the context of wholeness.
It also allows us then to not have, maybe daring to be means also daring to not be the things that otherwise we're expected we should be. Yeah. So maybe it doesn't even mean always daring to go out and do a new thing. Maybe it means daring to not do the thing too. Like it could be not having to follow the prescribed rules of success, whatever that is, right? Like maybe it's, I'm going to go out and just do this other thing. And like you said, also looking at the thing, like also looking at like what feels like it's not working, and and then naming that and moving through that intentionally.
Daring to be you.
Yeah.
Without these, because often I can speak for myself, but I'm sure not the only one. I live the you that I think everyone else wants me to be. And so this daring to be is like, I'm going to be the you, or the me, you be the you that is you. Yeah. And that changes because the more we know about ourselves, that you changes. But it's daring to stand in that space, whatever that space looks like on any given day, and live fully authentically in that space as much as we can.
Daring to not be the me that somebody I haven't spoken to in 10 years is still expecting me to be, or what, right? Like everybody we meet has a version of me in their head that is a version of me from when last we interacted, or last,
or even our own expectations, right? Of the we,
of
who we are.
Right. So daring to not, I don't know. There's so many now. There's so much daring going on right now.
Lots of daring. Well, but this is interesting because I think that it is this whole idea of unpackaged life, and I think there are these nuances and these different ways of looking at it, different angles of looking at it, and I think that's what brings like that's why it's like this catalyst for growth and for transformation, because there's so many aspects that we can embody and bring into our awareness.
Only you can tell you where you are needing to be daring, and where, what needs to be unpackaged, because that's
Yeah.
going to be different for everybody. And yet there's definitely those common aspects of how life tends to show up, and the places we tend to not want to be daring. And yeah, it is a fascinating journey to be on, that's for sure.
Well, and on the macro level of this, we've been talking a little bit on the micro level of, our individual daring to be, but then, on the macro level, when we collectively are daring to be collectively standing in those places where we're looking at systems and frameworks that have oppressed and disenfranchised and marginalized folks, then we begin to live this unpackaged life, not only individually, but collectively. And so that's the transformation shift. That's the shift in just everything, is when we begin to embody this in our own personal lives. And then that embodiment really just spills out into our collective life. This is like a ripple effect, this layered experience, from the individual to the collective. For me, that's exciting on all levels.
Yeah.
For us to really be able to do that, and to do that, dare to stand in those spaces where maybe we're the only ones or ones of few, but dare to stand in those spaces. I mean, we see it in the world today. There are a lot of spaces, folks, that we need to be standing in. And so this is also part of this conversation. Where is your place to stand? Yeah. Where is your place to dare to be?
Yeah. I think that would be if there were a fifth week to this series, I think that would be the fifth week is the global impact of living an unpackaged life. And I think we've hinted at it, and maybe we've brushed on it briefly, but like, we're not just doing this for ourselves, right? And I think that's the kind of the evolution of New Thought teachings, the evolution of science of mind, right? Like this idea that we don't live in a vacuum, we don't think in a vacuum, we don't create in a vacuum, that doing this unpackaging of ourselves is a collective thing. Like, I'm not just unpackaging for me, you're not just unpackaging for you. Yeah, that's a great benefit. Like, I get to directly experience the benefits of unpackaging. And this is the exact thing that the world needs, right? I mean, I think we've gone a long time before realizing the effects of living a packaged life. I think we're seeing in the world around us, we're seeing the effects of very well packaged lives where things aren't actually said as they are, and whatever. We don't need to go into all the pieces of that, but like the way the world is showing up right now and all the things that seem to not be working for so many people can be traced back to the result of like a very packaged life. What the world needs right now, what we need right now, right? What this evolution is calling us to do is this unpackaging. And it's not just for ourselves, it's unpackaging as a whole. The unpackaging creates a world where that's just the new, we don't like to necessarily use the word normal, but like commonly accepted ways of being, where everybody just gets to be.
And also this understanding that unpackage is not a one and done. It will always be a continuing process. There's always going to be, so we can't, trade one package for another, or this package was bad. Now we've got a new package. This. No, I mean, so that's not, because that can be also the tendency in these conversations as well. And that's not, and that's the tendency of us as humans too, right? Because we love to categorize, and if it's working, we want to stick with it. We don't want to explore anything else because, whatever. And so I think, along with this conversation is this understanding that this is evolution. This is not a destination. It's always going to be a process, and for us to be okay with the process, and for us to commit to always looking at ways that we can unpackage, because there's always going to be opportunities, old systems of beliefs and frameworks that need a little dismantling. And that's always going to be the case. Always.
Well, thanks for tuning in for this final episode of our Unpackaged Life series. This week is still asking us to dare to be, and I dare you. I dare me. I dare me to go out and be open and whole and vulnerable and authentic. And so that is the invitation. That is what is necessary to live this unpackaged life. So I hope that you have gotten a lot out of this. We certainly have, as we always do. We love being here, love sharing this with you. So thanks again for being here. If you are looking for more of a conversation like this, you can check out so many events we have coming up on our website at soulevolutioncollaborative.org. Poke around. If you're looking for something to jump into conversation with other people, you can join us at the gathering on Thursday nights. If you're looking for a little bit more learning, we have a lot of workshops and webinars coming up, some of them even on demand that you can go and watch now immediately. So go check out the website, soulevolutioncollaborative.org. There is so much there for you, and we would love to see you soon. So if we don't see you at Thursday or one of these other events, we will see you right back here next week at Soul Evolution Collaborative, Truth Be Told 2.0.